on the International Space Station, the crew on board can come to the Starliner and make sure that they're okay.
This has a mode where we call it backup mode, which is your get home mode, if you will. We can, without any communication at all, we can still effect a return to Earth, do a deorbit burn, and hit the point where we're trying to land, even without our computers. You know, that old mantra, failure is not an option, because it's a very dynamic thing we do flying in space, and it's not very forgiving. And we know that, and that's why we have these multiple systems and multiple redundant capabilities, because human life is special, and we want to preserve it at all costs.
I think exploration is just in the human heart. Butch, he describes himself as the first thing he said as a kid was why. And I think that's in all of us. Maybe we don't verbalize it, but we all ask why. And that's what exploration is. It's that next step of why. So why not go back to the moon? Why not try to live on the moon? It seems like a natural stepping stone to the next thing, Mars, which just calls us. Like, why is that planet there? What is the future of that planet? What is the future of our planet? And to be able to take these next steps in exploration, we're going to start answering those questions.
We stand on the pinnacle. This is kind of where everything, integration, everything comes together, which is where Sunny and I sit. And this is just a part of the ongoing process of growing and expounding our knowledge and our understanding of all things for the benefit of mankind.
I am Sunny Williams, and I am ready to fly NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test.
I'm Butch Wilmore, and I am ready to fly NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test.
And we are ready here at 49 minutes, 17 seconds until liftoff. Now, this historic flight test will be a major milestone for United Launch Alliance. NASA's Antonio Jaramillo joins us now with ULA's CEO and president, who has more about this company's road to this moment.
Thank you, Megan. Joining me is Tori Bruno, CEO and President of United Launch Alliance. Tori, it's so great to have you back on here. Can you give us a quick recap, first on the issue that occurred during the last launch attempt and how teams resolved it and got us to where we are today?
Absolutely. So we have a ground system at the pad that controls the things that occur in the last few moments before we go to ignition. This particular system is the one that releases the rocket from the pad and controls what happens to getting the umbilicals loose. And we have a triple redundant system that is also able to vote, and we lost one card within one of those three chassis that do this. The crew was never in any kind of danger or anything like that, but in our timeline, had that failed much later, we would have relied on the double redundancy and voting that remained, but that early on, our criteria says stop and understand what's happening. We did resolve it the next day on a Sunday. It is a card within a chassis that has power supplies. It was one of the two power supplies that are also redundant, and so the flaw was really that power supply going down and not switching to the backup supply built into the chassis. So we removed it, we replaced it, we put the modules right back in it. The chassis we're using we know works because it's the same chassis we used to launch Vulcan on Cert 1. Everything has checked out and been retested, and now we're good to go.
That's great to hear, and it is a beautiful day right now. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful launch. What's the trajectory like for this launch? I mean, who along the U.S. will be able to see it?
Yeah, this is a very unique trajectory because it's flat and long for crew safety. And so it'll head out from here, it'll go north and a little bit to the east, and so all along the southern coast of the United States you have a pretty good chance of seeing it. And what that trajectory allows us to do is to have no blackout areas where the crew would be unable to abort the flight, God forbid, in the event of an anomaly. And it delivers them just short of being orbital, so if there were any issues with the capsule's propulsion system, they get a free return safely to the surface of the Earth. So very unique for us. We've never flown, apart from the test flights of this capsule, a trajectory that is suborbital before.
Wow, and talking about uniqueness, is there anything new or different on this Atlas V rocket for this crewed launch compared to other uncrewed Atlas V launches?
Yes, there are. There's a handful of things, and they are all safety related. So the most obvious thing is there's no payload fairing, because if there were to be an abort where we want the capsule to fly the crew safely away, the fairing would be in the way, so we fly without it. We also have an emergency detection system, which is like a very high-speed computer that is plugged into all the systems on Atlas and monitoring its health, so that if an anomaly started happening faster than any human could possibly do it, this computer would detect it and command the separation of the capsule. And of course, on Centaur, we have 2 RL-10s instead of 1 rocket engine for more thrust because of that long, flat trajectory. The last thing we do is actually kind of subtle and maybe a little bit trivial for most people, but we anodize the first stage of the booster to protect it from a thing called stress corrosion cracking. And just to be extra careful for the crew, we actually double the thickness of that anodization.
Wow, that is fascinating. Tori, thank you so much for joining us here today. Megan, D, Mike, back over to you.
And as we check out some pad team members there getting ready to leave the crew access tower, teams inside Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston are also keeping a close eye on launch. Here's NASA's Brandy Dean and Boeing's Jim May.
Thanks so much, Megan. Welcome back to Mission Control Houston at NASA's Johnson Space Center. We are now 44 minutes away from launch and everything continuing to go pretty smoothly. Team here is under leadership again of Flight Director Mike Lammers today. Once Starliner gets off the pad, Jim and I will be with you through the ascent, giving you the play-by-play as Starliner makes its way into orbit and expanding on the calls that you'll hear from Capcom Joshua Kutrick, making to Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams.
There are a number of major milestones you'll want to keep an eye out for during Starliner's climb to orbit. The first you'll hear from Starliner's crew is roll program coming from Commander Wilmore, indicating that Starliner is rolling into the planned orientation for ascent and orbit ops. Then about 45 seconds into flight, the crew and Starliner will reach what's called max Q, which is the maximum dynamic pressure that they will experience during ascent, and that happens just before they reach Mach 1.
A minute and 35 seconds into flight, the solid rocket boosters that give Starliner its first major push into orbit will have been used up. Starliner will then hold on to them for just a little more than a minute after that, and then jettison the boosters before second stage takes over and gets Starliner the rest of the way to orbit.
Starliner will actually reach orbit about 11 minutes and 58 seconds into flight, at which point the Centaur's main engines will cut off. Starliner and its crew hold on to that stage for a couple of minutes, and then separate from it at around 14 minutes 58 seconds into flight. From there, Butch and Sonny will be free-flying Starliner on their own.
During ascent, you'll hear Kutrick mentioning a number of abort-related milestones as Starliner moves past them. Starliner can safely abort all the way up to orbit, as you just heard in that interview we saw from Florida. That includes the East Coast, off the coast of Newfoundland, and off the coast of Ireland. Beyond that, it would just be able to safely abort to orbit, and of course, we're hoping not to need any of those options.
And the last major milestone before crew begins what we call orbit ops is the orbital insertion, or OI burn, which will move Starliner into slightly elliptical orbit as opposed to the more slightly suborbital trajectory that it starts off in after separating from the Centaur. From there, Starliner will be on its way to the International Space Station.
And speaking of the space station, let's check in with Rob Navius and the International Space Station Flight Control Team. Rob?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Brandy. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, flight controllers are keeping tabs on the countdown and monitoring the work on board by the Expedition 71 crew in advance of Starliner's scheduled arrival tomorrow. After docking, NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Tracy Dyson, along with Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos and fellow cosmonauts Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, will be ready to roll out the red carpet as Wilmore and Williams float through the hatch into the Harmony module. Now, the dock timeline is designed to be variable. That means that the number of days Starliner could stay at the station could be adjusted depending on any further launch delays or undocking delays caused by weather conditions at the western U.S. landing sites for Starliner. One of the most important dock days for the Starliner crew will come 2 days prior to their scheduled undocking, when they load the last of the cargo items to be returned to Earth in the vehicle and conduct onboard manual piloting proficiency. That will enable them to stay sharp for their departure from the station and the deorbit and entry events that will follow. We're now
FE,
41
LP.
minutes, 9 seconds away from
Disable CAT,
liftoff.
TVM system
Today, the operational loops are so far thankfully quiet. And with that, we'll go back to our folks at the Cape.
As we prepare in less than an hour to launch 2 astronauts to space, during this test flight, let's check back in with NASA's Antonia Jaramillo, who's with NASA's Associate Administrator, about the mission.
Thank you, Dee. Joining me is Jim Free, NASA's Associate Administrator. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. Can you discuss a little bit why it's important for the space agency that we have another American spacecraft launching to space from American soil?
Well, I mean, it is truly historic day that we have today. It is the 6th time we've launched a new vehicle to space, and this time with the first female on one of those missions in Sunny, and from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, not the Air Force Station any longer. And we're also, now it gives us that chance to get back to ISS with another crew. And the learning that we're doing there about the human body, about technology, about science, of course science is key to all we do. And then to prepare ourselves for those missions to the moon and then onto Mars.
Absolutely. A lot of firsts, a lot of important things for sure happening on this mission. You talked briefly on this. Can you discuss again why it's important just in general that we have multiple spacecraft available to send humans to space?
We need that access. So right now we have one provider giving us that access to space station. This will give us a second provider, which means if we have a problem with either, we have ways to get our crews to and from station, which helps keep the tempo that we've had for 23 years of having humans in low Earth orbit, but also that opportunity to get the crews back if there's an issue at all, and keep that presence going.
Absolutely. This has already been a very exciting year for the agency with many, many fascinating missions already taking place. Now with this historic launch about to take off, what else can the public look forward to?
It has been a great year, and certainly a lot of learning already for me about the incredible mission that we have at NASA. And the missions that we have remaining this year, I'll just highlight a couple of them. Europa Clipper, which will be an incredible mission for us to watch in its journey and understanding even more about the solar system. NISAR, which will help continue our learning of Earth. And then we have X-59, that first A in NASA, right, the aeronautics, which will go through its first flight this year. We're about to do an engine run-up on that aircraft. And of course, heading towards Artemis 2 next year. The crews in Washington this week planted a moon tree just yesterday with our deputy administrator, and that gets us on our path back to the moon.
Absolutely, and we cannot wait for all of those missions. Jim, thank you so much for joining us here today. Megan, D, Mike, back over to you.
Thank you both. And we are now 38 minutes until liftoff of NASA's Boeing crew flight test with Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. You can see there inside the Starliner spacecraft, patiently, maybe, awaiting liftoff, right, Mike?
Oh, they're very patient at this point, and so far so good today. It's been a very smooth count, as Rob Navius mentioned earlier.
And so the plan is for Butch and Sunny to be docked. That was a call out saying that the pad team has cleared the pad. Now the plan is for Butch and Sunny to be docked to the ISS for at least 8 days, and then after they will return to Earth with a soft touchdown in the American Southwest. That's video and sound from inside Starliner during its return to Earth 2 years ago as part of the Orbital Flight Test 2 mission. Its heat shield will reach 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit during re-entry. Parachutes then deploy, and the heat shield is discarded to expose Starliner's airbags. The original test pilot you see on the bottom center of your screen, Rosie the Rocketeer, collecting data of what astronauts might experience during landing. Starliner is the first and only American orbital crew capsule to land on land. This allows for quicker access to crew and cargo. It also makes turning the spacecraft around for future missions quicker. But Mike, Starliner can also land in water in the case of an emergency.
Absolutely. Starliner has a lot of heritage and commonality with the Orion spacecraft, which lands on water. Starliner's a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter, so it can actually land on land. It has those airbags, as we saw. I can't wait to try them out. That's the first thing I'm going to ask Butch and Sunny about. How are the airbags? Because Soyuz is a little bit hard landing, but everybody's fine. But it's really those airbags, I think, are going to make a difference. But landing on water, we have a different airbag configuration, and so we have a fifth airbag that opens up in the middle, and so it's definitely planned that we could land on water, but we save that only for emergencies because refurbishing the capsule afterwards is going to be kind of tough with all the saltwater contamination. So we'd really like to land on land. We have 5 spots in the southwest of the United States that we can land on.
And I remember Sunny saying that she would much rather land on land because she said she had a lot of anxiety with landing in the water, even after you're back on Earth, because it's such a long rescue process and you're bobbing in the ocean. You know, she said when you land on land, it's done, you're safe.
See, that's the Air Force perspective. That's how we always think of things too. The Navy guys, you know, they should like the water, but no, this is jokes aside. That's exactly it. It's a lot easier to find us and a lot more options if and when we land on land.
All right, so we're coming up on 35 minutes until liftoff.
And here comes a comm check.
Yeah, I want to set the stage now for a series of comm checks.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Op 60, step 10, step 20. Blast danger area is clear.
Roger.
So yeah, we expect to hear repeated communication checks with Capcom in Houston and the crew. This is an opportunity for them to also discuss any anomalies or resolutions to those anomalies, but we've been saying no issues, the team today, so that's great news. And then these comm checks that we'll hear now, we're going to periodically hear them throughout these final 34 minutes. And again, communication is so important, and we want to make sure that those channels are working properly from the crew to everybody else on the ground that's helping to monitor launch. And where we are now, again, the pad team has cleared the pad.
So it's just Butch, Sunny, a Starliner, and Atlas and Centaur all together.
Right. Yep. The first 2 astronauts to fly in Starliner.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I can also give you step 60. Flight hazard area has been cleared of all personnel accounted for.
Roger.
Butch and Sunny, the first 2 astronauts to fly in Starliner. Sunny will be the first woman to test an orbital spacecraft. And the last time people flew to space in an Atlas-class rocket was nearly 61 years ago. CFT is going to be that final test to certify a second commercial spacecraft to ferry astronauts to and from the space station. And this is a cool fact too, actually. Once in orbit, for the first time in NASA history, the agency will have 3 different crew spacecraft orbiting in space simultaneously. So that's, of course, the International Space Station, the SpaceX Crew Dragon, and then Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. What an incredible milestone.
That is an incredible milestone, and NASA's going to break that again, hopefully soon, when we have another spacecraft. We're working here at the Kennedy Space Center to get Artemis and the Orion spacecraft up into space, too. So these are exciting times, and we're building a future where there's even more spacecraft in the future with humans on board going to space. And that's more opportunity for future astronauts.
Yeah, Dee, what do you think about that? Again, Boeing, Boeing Starliner joining as one of the 3 crewed spacecraft that's in orbit.
Yeah, exactly. I echo exactly what Mike said, that this is all about expanding human spaceflight. So having another vehicle, once this is certified, is going to do exactly that. It's going to get more people into space. Of course, this time to the International Space Station, it's going to increase science. But of course, there's also private missions. So, at the end of the day, it's going to be, it's always great when you can get more people, into space.
Yeah, and we've been asking you to submit your Ask NASA questions from social media, so let's answer some more of those now. We have this one from, love this name, Shaquille Oatmeal on Twitch asking, what's the life of an astronaut like between launches, Mike?
Yes, we we spend all of our life, training and wanting to become an astronaut, and then once you're an astronaut, what's it like? And so we do a lot more training. But I'll say that the last time I flew in space, we just had our landing anniversary on June 1st on STS-134, and that was in 2011. That would have been a great day to launch, but we chose not to. That's 13 years ago. So in the last 13 years, what have I been up to? And that's been helping get Dragon and Starliner up into space, helping my friends aboard the International Space Station as Capcom. I helped Sunny when she was doing spacewalks, and we help each other. It's all part of a big team. And so today it's great to see Butch and Sunny. They've both been waiting a long time to go fly again. Trying to get a third mission or a fourth mission is really, you have to wait and be patient. And Butch and Sunny are going to have they've been working hard on Starliner too. And that's what we do between missions. We help get ready for the next missions and help our friends be ready and support them while they're in space.
Yeah, and the Commercial Crew Program is so important because in working with our commercial partners, it really allows NASA to pursue other things, like, again, returning to the moon. Our eyes are set on Mars with the Artemis program.
Indeed, and I'll just say I've enjoyed working both with SpaceX and really with Boeing. I mean, when we saw our teammates on the montage earlier, it just it made me tear up a little bit, and I'm not afraid to say that because there's a lot of respect with the team.
And let's take another question now. This one is from World Citizen on YouTube asking, does the crew on the space station watch the launch?
So right now it's the middle of
L minus 30 minutes.
30 minutes to go.
RC, conduct weather briefing on Channel 8 Weather Conference Net.
Roger.
So arm controls, start arm hydraulic final preps.
Roger.
LOX 1, perform pogo suppressor charge.
Roger.
Prop 1, perform RD-180 transducer converter calibration.
Roger.
Peony 2, perform Centaur LH2 SVV cycle test.
Roger.
That's all the communications between the launch team, basically all the steps that's needed to get us to T0.
Yes, less than 30 minutes. Less than 30 minutes left. So aboard the International Space Station, if the crew gets a minute, I do believe that they're beaming up this launch broadcast. So hi to my friends aboard the International Space Station. That they're going to watch the launch. They're very invested in this. They've been waiting for weeks, months for the Starliner to arrive, and we're good friends with the crew on board. So it's going to be very cordial. But yes, I remember watching.
L minus 29 minutes.
The shuttle's launch. And then when my friends landed on either the shuttle or on the Soyuz, we would try to watch the landing coverage too. So certainly we were always watching NASA TV.
And we did get a chance to talk to NASA astronauts Tracy Dyson and Jeanette Epps prior to launch.
Prop 1, LC.
Prop 1, go.
Are we complete?
Yes, RD-180 transducer converter calibration is complete and the engine FIV is open.
Roger. Flight control, start flight control final prep.
Roger. LC, Peony 2.
Go ahead.
Centaur LH2 SVV cycle tests are complete.
Roger.
Again, Tracy Dyson, Jeanette Epps, two of the astronauts that are on the International Space Station already. We did get a chance to talk to them prior to launch.
Update complete.
And they
Roger.
said they are ready for Butch and Sunny to arrive. They've gotten their areas all set up for them, so they're really excited to welcome them just about 26 hours after liftoff today. Again, 27 minutes, 53 seconds and counting until liftoff of Butch and Sunny, the first two to fly Boeing's Starliner capsule to the International Space Station. Let's go over now to Brandy and Jim inside Mission Control in Houston.
Thanks, Megan. Lead Crew Flight Test Flight Director Mike Lammers is getting ready to poll the flight control team here in Houston for a go or no-go, verifying that all of Starliner systems are ready for launch. Everything is looking good at the moment, and Lammers will use this poll to determine his own response to the final go, no-go poll by the launch conductor just before liftoff.
Once we do get into the terminal countdown time frame, there are a few major activities that the team will oversee. The first is Starliner's transition from ground power to battery power. That comes about 18 minutes before launch, and we leave it as late as possible so we can launch with those batteries as...
Go ahead.
Arm hydraulic final preps are complete.
Roger.
L minus 27 minutes.
We leave that power transition as late as possible so we can launch with the batteries as close to full charge as possible. A few minutes later, with less than 10 minutes to go before liftoff, Starlighter's ordnance will be armed. That activates the critical systems that are needed to detach all the things that Starliner would ultimately deploy or jettison as it climbs to orbit, or back for a landing if that became necessary. And then finally, just 1 minute and 15 seconds before launch, they'll work with the crew to activate the launch abort system, which would rocket the crew to safety in the case of an abort or on the pad early in the ascent.
This will likely be the last you hear from us until liftoff. So we are going to send you back to the team in Florida to let Megan, Dee, and Mike see us through the rest of the countdown. Go Starliner.
Now let's take a closer look at Starliner, the next generation crew capsule that you see atop the Atlas V rocket there on launch pad 41 on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Mike, Starliner is something, like you said, and Butch and Sunny, you guys really have your fingerprints all over that to make it the ride to space that you guys wanted.
Indeed, Starliner is definitely Ferguson even called it a astronaut's or pilot spacecraft.
And so that next generation crew capsule, it measures 16.5 feet tall with a diameter of 15 feet. That's about the size of a mid-size SUV. It was designed to carry up to 7 astronauts or a mix of crew and cargo for missions to the International Space Station. After today's test flight, NASA will fly crews of 4 or 5 with cargo. Starliner is also reusable up to 10 times. I'm sure you're excited for your opportunity to fly in Starliner, Mike.
Oh, indeed. We're hopefully Butch and Sunny, along with Calypso, are going to pave the way. We'll be in the other spacecraft that Boeing has. We have 2 capsules, and so again, it's always good to have an extra one and a backup one, and we're looking forward to flying next year.
Let's head back over to Johnson now, where we have Rob Navius with an update for us. Rob.
As we mentioned earlier, in the midst of Starliner arrival preparations on the station, NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Tracy Dyson, Jeanette Epps, and Mike Barrett are preparing spacesuits to be used for a trio of spacewalks scheduled to begin on June 13th. Other maintenance work is also planned for today by the expedition crew as they gear up for the docking of Starliner tomorrow to the forward port of the Harmony module. Once Starliner docks, it will be the 6th visiting vehicle at the International Space Station, a crowded house 260 miles above the Earth. We're standing by here in Mission Control for the Atlas V to take flight and for a new chapter in human spaceflight history to begin just 23 minutes from now. With that, we'll head back now to the Kennedy Space Center.
23 minutes, 9 seconds and counting until liftoff. So let's check back in with ULA's Dylan Rice and Boeing's Lauren Brennicke with the latest. Guys.
Minutes. Hey, Megan. Thanks for coming back to us here in the
FYS,
ASOC. We've
switch
been
all
monitoring.
secondary decoms to RF link and verify lock.
Roger.
Initiate orbital parameter calculations on primary CCLS.
Roger.
Monitoring those procedures here, and we're coming up on about L-minus 22 minutes to launch, and around this time during the last launch attempt, our team worked through what you may have seen, a suit pressurization issue. They worked very quickly around this time in the countdown to make sure that everything was going smoothly with this. But when we switched to internal power at L-minus 18 minutes, that triggered a small voltage trip, and flight software correctly identified it and turned off the fans. So we quickly turned them back on, just like you would do with your computer, off and on. And today we're going to turn the fan off when we move over to internal power so it doesn't trip again. Then we will turn it back on after. The real difference is that crew will lower their visors about 5 minutes later this time. That action would usually be taken around now or a minute or so from now, and we will listen for that in just a few minutes. The Capcom will tell the crew to put their visors down at that time, and that is a configuration that is needed for proper airflow through their suit. In an emergency, they could pressurize their suits.
Go ahead.
Pogo suppressor charge is complete.
Roger.
LCSYS.
Go ahead.
All secondary. Secondary.
Yeah, you're breaking up, SYS.
All secondary become verified on our link.
I did copy that. Please check your headset.
All right, as I was saying, that in an emergency, they would be able to pressurize their suits quickly if needed. And it's a little different for them this time because, as we mentioned during this broadcast, their helmet is really more of a visor. It lays back like a hoodie on their shirt, and they pull it forward and then just zip it up. And this config also calls for them to deflate their lumbar support and secure their restraints from launch. So once we get to that point, it's really buckle up, it's almost go time, and then the crews will report back when finished. And then while we're talking around L-19, we're also going to be looking for the Starliner readiness poll for terminal count. That will happen on a side channel. So I'll be listening for that, and I'll let you know when we hear it. We do have a few polls coming up. That one is short. It will take place in the Boeing Mission Control Center, or BMCC, here in Florida. That is where the spacecraft launch conductor, Brian Gartner, will pull people in that room in charge of the propulsion system. Yeah, you see the room there on your screen.
Oh, minus 20 minutes.
P&E-1, reinitiate AHB charging.
Roger.
RLM, verify redline monitor and event table are in the correct configuration for terminal count.
The lumbar support. Verify.
RC, verify solar radiation, acceptable for launch.
Verified.
Right, you might have heard, kind of came in faintly.
Starliner copies.
They asked them to go ahead and deflate their lumbar support. Wasn't sure if we're going to hear a little bit more about that. But again, there will be 3 calls coming up on this Starliner readiness poll for terminal count. They will pull the mission support room manager, or MSR. After launch, the BMCC turns into mission support as things shift over to Houston. They will also poll the spacecraft test conductor, who monitors our power systems.
Switch to channel 1. All personnel and visitors remain in present position until launch. Maintain operational silence in the LCC.
This is the LC with a terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds a launch constraint anytime after the terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold.
So, Lauren, as we were mentioning earlier, there's been traffic on multiple side nets, and that announcement that you just heard is Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo now bringing the team out from the individual subsystem nets, bringing everybody to the command channel, channel 1, for the final minutes of the countdown here. So we're gonna start to hear more traffic on the command channel as we start to do our final configuration steps for launch. So we're going to hear a couple of things. We're going to hear...
minus 18 minutes.
Flight control, perform launch on time verification.
Roger.
We're going to hear some final avionics checks like that last call. We're going to hear hold fire switch verification. The range hold fire system allows representatives from Space Launch Delta 45 a hold button in the up the road at the Morrell Operations Center. So if there's an issue or range safety issue that comes up, they can press a button and automatically stop our sequencer. So that's called a hold fire check. Those hold fire switches will be configured shortly, and we'll also start to hear calls about wrapping up our helium bottle charging on both the first and second stage.
And Dylan, as you mentioned, with the traffic on the loops increasing a little bit, you at home may notice that we are speaking less, and so we are going to be listening to some of these things as they happen live with you.
Roger.
And we feel it's important for you to be able to...
Go ahead.
AHB charging reestablished and at flight mass.
Roger.
minus 17 minutes.
OSM, place SRB ignition SNA switch in the enable position.
SRB ignition enabled.
Verify FCO, RCO, and OSM hold fire switches are in their proceed position.
Ready to proceed.
All right, we're going to send it over to NASA's Daryl Nail at Hangar AE. Daryl.
All right, thank you very much. And getting a final look at the weather, I can tell you this, it's a beautiful day to fly. Outside, our launch weather officer told us that there's no change in the forecast. We are 90% go, and what a beautiful shot of our beaches here from the courtesy of our chopper team here at the Kennedy Space Center. Folks coming out to enjoy the launch and an amazing day. Weather, no changes again. Low-topped cumulus clouds on land, which you see some of it there, but because they're low-topped, that's not a concern. When a rocket flies through a big, thick cumulus cloud, it can trigger a lightning strike, but those clouds are not the kind that can do that, according to Launch Weather Officer Melody Lovin. And so we're good to go there. We also have a launch visibility is always a factor here in the southeast. Can you see the rocket and from where? And our friends at United Launch Alliance provided us with this graphic so you can see about which point in the launch you would see the rocket. If you're within the first two inner circles, you should be able to see the solid rocket boosters jettison a minute after launch. Folks in the Orlando and Central Florida area will be able to see it about 90 seconds of flight, and then it'll come into view for much of the rest of the state after more than about 2 minutes, including Tampa on the west coast of Florida. The southeast corner of Georgia might be able to see the Atlas Centaur separation, which happens after 3 minutes of flight. Again, we're looking good here at the ASOC. Richard Jones polled his team, the NASA operations manager.
15 minutes.
And all of them are go.
LC flight, channel 1 and air to ground 1 are now merged, going to air to ground 1. Roger.
We'll send it back to the host desk.
LC flight, air to ground 1, ready for comcheck with Starliner on channel 1. Roger. Starliner, LC, comcheck on channel 1.
Those are comm checks again.
LC, Starliner, loud and clear.
I have you loud and clear also.
And our astronauts, who you see there. Again, this is the test flight.
Houston, comcheck, air to ground 1.
Houston, Starliner, loud and clear.
Houston has you loud and clear on air to ground 1.
Test flight, and Boeing is working towards certification. To do that, there are a total of 87 flight test objectives and many more operational capability checkouts. So take a look at some of the main objectives with the crew on board. I'll go through a couple of them here. So they will demonstrate the performance of crew-related equipment. The crew will perform hatch operations and transfer emergency equipment. They will also evaluate the vehicle and transfer cargo while in a docked configuration. They'll conform functionality of manual piloting and deorbit with a successful separation of the crew module from the service module. And finally, they will demonstrate Starliner's entry and descent. 13 minutes and 24 seconds from only the 6th time NASA astronauts will launch on a new spacecraft designed for crew. And if you're curious about the previous 5 flights, we have you covered. Check out our video here. Mercury Redstone 3 was the first test flight. Alan Shepard, May 5th, 1961.
Gemini 3 with astronauts Gus Grissom and John Young launched March 23rd, 1965.
Apollo 7, October 11th, 1968, with Wally Schirra, Don Isley, and Walt Cunningham.
STS-1 launched with astronauts John Young and Robert Crippen, and it launched April 12th, 1981.
Starliner Houston, your suit fan Bravo is repowered. It looks good. Please close your visors. Column closed.
You saw video there of Demo 2, May 2020, Doug Hurley, Bob Benkin.
And then, of course, today's NASA's and Boeing's crew flight test with Butch Wilmore, and Sonny Williams.
You know, Mike, 12 minutes and 15 seconds to go. How are you feeling?
I am excited. I'm grateful to ULA and Boeing and NASA team that we are sharing this historic moment together. Go Starliner.
Yeah, our hearts and well wishes are with Butch and Sonny as they make history testing what is poised to be the second commercial crew vehicle that is certified to ferry people to and from the International Space Station. So with 11 minutes and 46 seconds to go, let's send it back over to ULA's Dylan Rice and Boeing's Lauren Brennicke to walk us through the final moments of today's launch countdown. Let's do it, guys.
Let's do it, Megan. We just heard the Starliner readiness poll is a go. We know the crew's visors are down now, so we are moving along smoothly into the final 11 minutes and 30 seconds of this countdown. This is an instantaneous launch window today, which means that we will launch when the orbital path for the ISS aligns with the Space Coast. Once we get into orbit, Starliner will be working to catch up with the space station, eventually reaching speeds of more than 17,500 miles per hour. It'll take about 25 hours or so to get there. And we are going to be watching here any minute
minus 11 minutes.
for the crew access
arm
arm.
control, so the crew access arm for launch.
Roger.
Right on cue. Crew access arm about to start moving away from the spacecraft. And Dylan, we will watch it move very slowly today, but it could move much faster if needed.
That's right, Lauren. It takes about 2 minutes to rotate the 120 degrees back away from Starliner to its stowed position and latched position on the crew access tower. Here we go. But we could, in the event of an emergency, redeploy it in less than 15 seconds.
It's amazing that it can do that. We hope to not have to ever see that happen. After liftoff today, Brandy and Jim will continue commentary from Houston through ascent, spacecraft separation, and the orbital insertion burn. We will have the shot of Butch and Sunny inside Starliner until the moment of launch, and then we will get it again when we get to the ISS.
minus 10 minutes.
Flight, verify CST 100 on internal power.
Verified.
Starliner, configure ordnance for launch.
Touch and wait.
All right, the spacecraft is running completely on its own now. And they are configuring ordnance for launch. That means the devices that initiate our separation events are ready to support both nominal and contingency operations that,
Roger.
that happen or could happen during ascent.
So, Lauren, we're just about 2.5 minutes now away from our terminal count status check. The terminal count status check is the final report from each operator indicating that their system, whether it be a ground control system or a launch vehicle system, is ready to execute the final 4 minutes of the countdown to launching the rocket. At this point, if there were an issue, the anomaly team would be discussing it, but nothing like that has happened right now. All's quiet. I am expecting to hear all members of the team report go when pulled by Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo.
And we're actually hearing on a side channel that they are preparing for the launch vehicle systems poll. This is the long one. A lot of people view this as their favorite poll. It's kind of fun to listen to them list off each system, and then that team will give a final go or no go for launch. And we will be able to watch cameras on the rocket today, and live telemetry feeding back will provide a real-time look at the spacecraft model when video isn't possible during the ascent as it moves through the dynamic phases.
L minus 8 minutes.
Under 8 minutes before Butch and Sunny head back to a place they consider home. Both of them have spent 2 different stints of about 6 months on the International Space Station, and they are thrilled to be going back for a 3rd time. Sunny told me she even cried the last time she left the space station because she didn't know if she would ever go back. So this flight is a dream for her.
LC arm control.
Go ahead.
Crew access arms stowed for launch.
Roger. LC switch to ready position. All steps are complete prior to status check.
Let's listen in to Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo conduct that final terminal count status check as we prepare for launch.
L minus 7 minutes.
Status check to proceed with terminal count, Atlas systems, propulsion,
Go.
hydraulics,
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems. Propulsion.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Has gas.
Go.
Electrical systems. Airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
GCQ.
Go.
Op support.
Go.
Com.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
Arm control.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Redline monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Flight director.
Houston flight is go.
Starliner.
Starliner, go.
Launch director.
You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC. Verify T0 is set for 14:52:15 Zulu.
Verified.
Starliner, net is clear.
Thank you, LC. For everybody listening, just a thought. Sonny and I, as we were traveling to the pad, we saw many American flags, and many of you were waving flags at us. And then as we reached the pad, we look up, and of course there's that American flag on the side of the white room, also one on the side of the rocket itself. And we know that that represents unity and resilience and unified efforts for the common good. And that's what Sonny and I have witnessed this last month. Each of you displaying what this nation's forefathers envisioned, a people committed to God, family, and country, a people who use their gifts and talents for the common good and are passionate and tough. And we all know that when the going gets tough, and it often does, the tough get going. And you have. And Sonny and I are honored to share this dream of spaceflight with each and every one of you. So with that, LC, let's get going. Now let's put some fire in this rocket, and let's push it to the heavens where all these tough Americans have prepared it to be.
Let's go, Calypso. Take us to space and back.
LC flight, Starliner configured for terminal count.
On my mark,
Roger.
the time will be T-minus 4 minutes and counting. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3:55.
Resumed for
Ground
on-time
power is enabled.
liftoff.
Just beautiful words from Butch there. No better example of unity on this planet than what happens at the International Space Station, where Butch and Sonny are headed in just 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
3:30.
Atlas hydraulics at flight fresh.
Atlas boosters hydraulic steering systems now pressurized for launch.
Starliner's LAS prop valves are configured for launch, the propulsion valves that need to be open in the case of an abort from the pad.
3 minutes.
Pressurizing Atlas tanks. Securing LO2 topping.
250. FTS internal.
Flight software is in ascent mode. It is now set for the uphill climb.
$159. Vehicle internal. $155. Launch sequencer start. 150.
Securing Centaur LH2.
Securing Centaur LO2.
Vehicle is now transferred to its onboard batteries, and topping is
140.
completed.
Launch enabled. 137. FTS armed. $120. OCU's armed. SCS count started. EDS ascent.
Starliner, last arm to auto.
Last arm auto.
Roger.
That call meaning if the emergency detection system on Atlas detects something.
Rock report range status.
Range green. 54. POP started.
It will trigger the launch abort system on Starliner and fire automatically. If that happened, the spacecraft would push itself away from the rocket a mile up and a mile out.
Atlas at flight press.
Centaur at flight press. 25.
Status check. Go Atlas. Go Centaur. Go Starliner. Godspeed, Butch and Sonny.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Starliner and Atlas V, carrying 2 American heroes, drawing a line to the stars for all of us.
Commander Butch Wilmer there, calling down to Mission Control here in Houston that the spacecraft has begun rolling into the right attitude for its ascent, and the Guidance, Navigation, and Control Officer here in the room seeing good data on that.
Starliner passing through max Q, or the point of maximum dynamic pressure where the forces of air friction are highest, which in Sunny will shortly be passing through Mach 1, where the speed of sound.
You got a good throttle up.
Starliner and Atlas looking good with speeds and attitude increasing as expected. Coming up in less than 20 seconds, the solid rocket boosters will run out of fuel and burn out.
Good SRB burnout.
Good SRB.
Now that the fuel in the solid rocket boosters has been depleted, the Atlas main booster stage will be continuing its burn for about the next 3 minutes.
Good handle.
Good handle.
That call, good handle from Capcom Joshua Kutrick, indicating that the crew now has the ability to initiate an abort manually if needed. All looking good so far. Now 2 minutes into Starliner's flight and coming up on the solid rocket booster jettison at the 2-minute and 40-second mark.
CLG and net, good trajectory.
CLG.
The solid rocket boosters have now been jettisoned after seeing Starliner through its first 90 seconds of flight. Team on the ground here confirming that it was a good jettison and that the vehicle's trajectory continues to look good. Now 3 minutes into today's flight.
Atlas booster now throttling back to limit the G-forces on Butch and Sunny, trying to limit that to around 3.5 times the force of gravity you would feel while on the ground.
Staging.
Here in the ground.
Decals open. You have sublimator rock.
Decal sub-act. Decal. Great act.
Team on the ground reporting that they saw the ascent cover on top of Starliner that's been protecting the spacecraft's docking system through its climb into orbit. They saw that jettison as planned.
Staging was good. You have good control.
And now the second stage's 2 Centaur engines have ignited to continue pushing Starliner into space, fueled by liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The next milestone that we'll be watching for is the aeroskirt jettison.
Starliner, you had good booster performance. You're up to plus 31.
Plus 31.
Atlas Control reporting booster performance offset of 31 seconds of ISP, or specific impulse, relative to its design baseline of around 450.
All continuing to perform well, almost 7 minutes into today's flight.
Good Centaur.
Good Centaur.
Capcom Joshua Kutrick continuing to pass good news up to Starliner's crew. That last one reporting that the Centaur upper stage remains in good condition and is performing well, pushing them into orbit.
St. John's open.
St. John's.
Starliner is now entering its first guided abort range, where Starliner would direct itself towards a specific location in the event of abort. In this case, just off the coast of St. John's, the capital of the Canadian province of Newfoundland, Labrador.
Starliner MECO converged 11:5 to 11:52. Good perf, you're at 34 to 36 seconds.
11:52, 34 seconds.
That call letting the crew know that the main engine cutoff, MECO, should happen just about on time, about 12 minutes into today's flight. Another good indication that Starliner's ascent is taking along exactly as expected. Main engine cutoff is a major milestone marking Starliner's arrival on orbit. Still got about 2.5 minutes until we get to that, with the spacecraft continuing to perform well, make its way towards orbit.
No action, Starliner on the LCL. That's just the system coming up into controlling mode.
Outstanding. No action.
Once the main engine's cut off, the next step will be the launch vehicle separation. That's set to occur just short of 15 minutes after launch, when Starliner will separate from the rocket and fly free in space for the first time. Flight Dynamics officer reporting that at this point, Starliner could potentially make an abort landing off the coast of Ireland.
Good cooling.
And they're, again, all continuing well, so we're not expecting to need that abort.
As Starliner is rapidly approaching orbital velocity, the abort region is only available for just over 1 minute, where Starliner would just continue up to orbit after that.
"30 seconds to MECO."
Just 30 seconds to go. Now until main engine cutoff, marking Starliner's arrival on orbit.
Nominal MECO, Starliner.
Nominal MECO.
And with that nominal MECO call, that's main engine cutoff. We've got good energy, meaning a good velocity for continuing to orbit, and a good plane, meaning Starliner's trajectory is aligned with the International Space Station for rendezvous tomorrow.
And with that, Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams returned to orbit. Individually, they are both extremely experienced astronauts.
14:5 to 14:52.
14:52.
They're both very experienced astronauts with a combined total of 489 days in space between them. Starliner is also the third spacecraft that they've launched in. Both have traveled to the International Space Station via space shuttles and Soyuz and are now well on their way to repeating the journey via Starliner. It's also worth noting that Williams' role as pilot marks the first time that a woman has crewed a flight test of an orbital spacecraft.
Just a few seconds ago, you heard Capcom Joshua Kutrich calling up to Butch and Sunny. With the expected time, Starliner will separate from Centaur at about 14 minutes, 52 seconds into flight, just under 2 minutes from now, or 1 minute from now.
That is actually the last major milestone for Starliner's ascent. All the hard work is done, but we need for Starliner to be flying on its own before it can begin heading towards the International Space Station. There's a slight pause in the action here while Centaur repressurizes and does some attitude control. We'll get into the right orientation to send Centaur on its way and then jettison it and move into the right orientation for the orbital insertion burn, which will come about 31 minutes into flight.
No action on the cabin temp Starliner.
No action.
And about 10 seconds until an expected launch vehicle separation.
LV-SEP confirmed.
Good LV-SEP.
And now that Starliner has separated from this Centaur upper stage, we have a big thank you to our partners at ULA, providing Butch and Sunny a smooth ride to space.
That is not the end of today's orbit activity, though. The team will now be getting ready for the orbital insertion burn, which comes 31 minutes after flight. So that's still about 15 minutes away now. Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore will be getting their tablets out and doing a few other activities to get Starliner ready for that. And that will be one of the that will be the first in a series of burns that will set Starliner on its way to the International Space Station. Once again, Starliner with astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams on board launched from Florida, the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Launch Pad 41 at 9:52 a.m. Central, 10:52 a.m. Eastern today, and they have now made it into orbit.
Your nominal TDRS show MDL is active. You have good targeting for OI.
Good targeting.
With the call for good targeting and information about Starliner's TDRS schedule being good, means that we've got good communication with the ground. TDRS is the tracking relay data satellites that Starliner uses to talk to the ground, and the flight controllers on the ground are seeing the dynamic.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you could relay a message to our brethren at ULA.
We're all listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, they've been a member of the family for a long time, but now it's official, and we want to welcome them to human spaceflight.
We all copy all and really appreciate the words.
And Houston Starliner, we are on the tablets and in insertion monitor.
Copy tablets, we're with you, insertion monitor.
So the crew have their tablets out, so no longer using the paper procedures now that the vehicle has stopped moving so quickly. So there's a handful of things that the crew's going to do now, mostly just prepare the inside of the cockpit so they are looking at the right data to prepare for the upcoming orbital insertion burn. The vehicle itself has done a few things recently. Started to power on the solar arrays on the back of Starliner and turning off several of the thrusters that are no longer needed at this phase of flight. Upcoming in about 4 minutes, Starliner is going to start to orient itself in the direction it needs to do the orbital insertion burn. And the crew inside the vehicle will be turning the wireless access point on and allow them to stream some of the data from the spacecraft onto their procedure tablets.
And Houston Starliner, last arm is off. Backup control switches, enable 1 on, enable 2 off. SMRCS is the mode.
We copy off. Enable 1 is on, enable 2 is off. SMRCS, you're in a good config.
Good config.
Your EXDV targets are on board and good.
Good EXDV.
Things will be pretty quiet as Starliner gets into position for the orbital insertion burn. That's still about 10 minutes away. Starliner is actually designed to be pretty autonomous and, in fact, docked with the space station on its last trip around without the help of any crew on board. But we do still want to know that if needed, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams could take control and manually abort the spacecraft's approach to the station if they needed to. So to prove that, one of the few things on their agenda after they reach orbit will be to perform a test of the manual piloting mode.
This test will involve first pointing Starliner's nose towards the Earth so that its communication antenna on the back of the service module is pointed at the satellites, the teeter satellites that allow it to communicate with the team on the ground. They'll then move Starliner so that its solar arrays are pointed at the sun, showing they could charge Starliner's internal batteries as needed. And they'll follow that up with a demonstration of the star trackers, one of the ways that Starliner determines where it is in space, pointing Starliner away from Earth so that the system, the Vesta system, can get a good look at the stars.
The next step will be for the crew to manually speed Starliner up and then slow back down, which will slightly raise and then lower their orbit and prove that they can manually break away from the orbit that the space station is in if they needed to. At that point, they can move on to the last items of the
still no
test.
action on your cabin temp. You're in a good config. It's 74 degrees in there. Yeah, and that's just due to that T2 sensor sitting beside the light. So we're actually going to inhibit that particular sensor. We'll let you know when we bring it back online.
Okay, great. Looks like we're on our way to thrust align.
Concur.
Josh Gutrick calling up that the crew can ignore some alarms they're seeing on the temperatures inside Starliner. That's just a result of one of the sensors being next to a light that's causing it to show higher than it actually is. But it sounds like the crew are pretty comfortable and are getting into place for that orbital insertion. As I was saying, after they have manually broken away from the orbit of, proven that they can manually break away from the orbit of the space station, they are going to move on to the last items of their test for tonight. That's manually moving Starliner into the right orientation for re-entering the atmosphere, and then moving back into the attitude that will let them soak up some sun with the solar arrays and try a different method of manually charging the spacecraft's batteries. But again, once that all has to wait until after the orbital insertion burn. This is again the first of several burns that will put Starliner on its way to the International Space Station. We've still got about 6.5 minutes until we fire up the engines for that burn.
Starliner, we did not see the hand controller deflection. Just wanted to know if you did that yet.
No, we'll get it now.
All good.
Establish barricades around MLP and an area beneath the MLP, and perform O2 LEL checks for complex 41 areas. Roger. ECS LC.
Team here on the ground seeing that everything is looking like it's in the right configuration for the orbital insertion burn. Now less than 5 minutes away. Starliner is currently about 102 miles above the Mediterranean Sea, heading southeast over India in the next few minutes.
Starliner, good config for the OI burn.
Good config for OI.
And good config from the OI burn. Crew and ground controllers noting that Starliner is pointed in the direction it needs to for the OI burn. It should also be about the time that the crew are using their tablets for their procedures, also charging them, keeping them topped up for the rest of the rendezvous.
We unfortunately won't have a view of Williams and Wilmore as they work through this procedure. Although we had a view of them from inside the cabin on the ground, Starliner isn't able to send that view to us again until it gets to the International Space Station. So you'll be seeing this screen quite a bit as Starliner was getting into the right position for the burn. And actually just now you can see some of the engines firing that help it steer and move around in space. And you can also see what attitude it's in at any given time. Lots of good information on this screen.
It is. A lot of this information actually directly mimics the views that the crew is seeing, especially the one in the upper left-hand panel. That is an exact copy of the display the crew is using for their attitude directional indicator. It also covers what mode their translational hand controller and the translational pointing is in. On the left side, on the right side, the pointing guidance, which tells the Starliner in automated mode which direction to point, or when in manual mode, which direction the crew needs to move the vehicle, like we're going to do in some of the manual piloting maneuvers. And following back up a little bit on the camera conversation, there is a planned upgrade of the Mustang system that we should see on our PCM-1 mission that will include live feeds from inside the cockpit.
And the Mustang system is the cameras that we were seeing views from earlier.
That's correct. There's a handful of cameras around the inside of Starliner. We often see the one from kind of beneath Butch and Sunny. That's given one of the better views without being directly right in their face while they're inside the cockpit during pre-launch. But once they're in orbit, they've gotten out of their seats a little bit, and we should be able to see a little bit more around the cabin.
We'll, though, as you've already heard, continue to hear regular audio updates from the crew. Everything going well now that Starliner is just under 30 minutes into today's flight. We've got about a minute and a half left to go into that orbital insertion burn that will be kind of the final end cap, really, to today's ascent, which again took place at 10:52 a.m. Eastern when Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams launched inside the first Starliner to carry crew members on board from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Launch Pad 41. They made it to orbit about 14 minutes later, and now we are just again waiting for this first of a series of burns that will set Starliner on its way to a rendezvous with the International Space Station that is scheduled to take place at 12:15 p.m. Eastern, 11:15 a.m. Central tomorrow.
And we're coming up at about 40 seconds till the orbital insertion burn. This burn is going to take Starliner out of its slightly suborbital trajectory and push it up to an altitude that will allow us to catch up with ISS for a rendezvous later tomorrow.
"15 seconds left to go, and once again, you'll be able to see those engines firing on this digital screen here that show when the burn has started.
2 seconds. And flight controllers here in Houston, seeing 4 good OMACs, good burn.
We take a look. That was a good OI burn. You're maneuvering to NavCal 1.
Good OI burn, going to NavCal 1.
And with that call up, both crew and flight controllers agreeing that that was a good OI burn. I'm looking at the trajectory plot here in Mission Control. I see our trajectory pointing us directly up to the altitude we need to go to for the next burn. Right now, Starliner is moving into NavCal mode, or NavCal attitude. That's going to be the first of several positions that Starliner, directions that Starliner points itself to track some of the stars from the Starliner and update the position inside of the position orientation of Starliner inside of its guidance, navigation, and control algorithms.
And of course, you're seeing lots of happy faces and cheers here there in Florida. Everybody glad to see Starliner safely in orbit with Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams in tow, sending it on its way to the International Space Station for docking tomorrow at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Once again, Starliner safely on orbit, has conducted a good orbital insertion burn, and is on its way.
Starliner, Houston.
Go ahead, Starliner, Houston.
Yeah, you do have good cooling. The sublimator is working. We are watching it, though, because the water usage is just a little more than we thought we were going to see. You probably noticed that. It's a reason for the advisory there. From the ground, we'd like to swap you over to the other leg. So we're going to close sublimator leg 1, wait for about 60 seconds, and then open up leg 2. You'll see us do that. No impact or action.
Okay, we copy. We'll be watching. Thank you.
Joshua Kutrick there again, giving the crew some words about information they're seeing on orbit. This one related to sublimators, which are used to cool the spacecraft down. But just letting them know that there's nothing that they need to be concerned about. The team will keep watching that. In the meantime, as Starliner begins making its way to the International Space Station, we're going to check in with Rob Navius in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Rob?
Yeah, thanks very much, Brandy. With Starliner en route to the station, the work now just beginning for Wilmore and Williams. First up, an important rendezvous burn called the NC burn, which will adjust Starliner's altitude relative to the station and begin to refine its path to the orbital laboratory. Flight Dynamics will be assessing the accuracy of Starliner's initial trajectory and will update any adjustments to that trajectory for subsequent maneuvers to be conducted over the next 24 hours. Now, we're expecting to hear the first of 3 audio reports from the crew during their free flight on how the ride uphill to orbit was before they move into what are called far-field demonstrations of the vehicle. That will include manual piloting tasks and a manual translation control test. That will prove Starliner's ability to execute a manual docking if required, as well as an abort capability prior to docking. Keep in mind, we're providing continuous coverage now of Starliner's flight to the International Space Station. On Thursday morning, rendezvous operations will begin in earnest shortly before 10 a.m. Eastern Time, leading to a targeted docking for Starliner to the station at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. So please stay with us around the clock as we bring you every minute of Starliner's flight. For now, we're going to sign off from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston and go back to Megan, Dee, and Mike Fink at the Cape.
Hey, and welcome back to the Space Coast of Florida, where about 36 minutes ago we witnessed the launch of a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying the first 2 astronauts, NASA's Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, inside Boeing's Starliner capsule to the International Space Station. The first time ever, Starliner now in the right orbit to rendezvous with the space station in just over 25 hours. How are you guys feeling? How was it to watch launch? Again, just right over the water behind us here.
I mean, this is extremely exciting, obviously a long time coming and a culmination of so much hard work by so many teams. But of course, we're going to be even happier when we see Starliner dock, and even happier when the hatch opens and we watch Sunny and Butch float into the International Space Station.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, well said, Dee. I mean, this is exciting. We've built up to this moment for years and years, and it finally happened. I got to see a Starliner launch with my friends on board. How cool is that? And I could feel like the whole planet was cheering for them.
Yeah, it was really nice to see it happen. There were a lot of emotions here at the host desk among the 3 of us, as well as the crew that's supporting us here on the host desk. And it's just a history-making launch. Sunny, again, the first woman to test an orbital spacecraft. That's amazing. And then again, the last time people flew to space in an Atlas-class rocket, 61 years ago. CFT, this final test to certify Starliner. And then once in orbit, the first time in NASA history that the agency will have 3 different crew spacecraft operating in space simultaneously. So that's the International Space Station, SpaceX's Crew Dragon, and again, once Boeing Starliner spacecraft gets there, Boeing Starliner spacecraft. So really just like a lot to celebrate. It's amazing. You know, Mike, I know you've been part of Starliner's journey from the very beginning, working alongside Butch and Sunny and all the teams across Boeing, NASA, ULA. So talk to us, how does it feel to see this rocket from your perspective?
I was so impressed all the way through the launch countdown and all the way through orbital insertion burn. Everything was just like the final simulation exercise they give us back at Johnson Space Center. where they just give us everything nominal. And there we are. Everything was fine. No hiccups, no drama, nothing to worry about. And so I was really happy with Butch and Sonny, and for Butch and Sonny, and happy with the whole team. As Butch said, thank you to the United Launch Alliance for a great ride up, and welcome them to the club of rocket companies that can send humans into space. Now we just got to get to space station in 24-ish hours.
And I want to discuss, let me know if you're there.
And we've been asking for some questions on social media, so we still want to get to those because there have been a lot. So why don't we pull up one question here right now? This one's from Ramon. What is your favorite part of being an astronaut, Mike? Is it days like this?
Definitely days like this, Ramon. Very much glad to be an astronaut on this day. I think Butch and Sonny might be a little bit happier than me to be an astronaut today, but this is definitely a great day. And if you're not on the rocket yourself, helping your friends is a really great way to be an astronaut.
And so, Mike, talk to us about, this is, again, a crewed flight test. Certification is what's next for Starliner. So what's the process to get us to your flight next year?
Well, first we have to, Butch and Sonny, they've gotten to orbit. That's, kind of step one. Now they got to get to the space station and complete their flight test objectives. Once they land safely in a desert somewhere with the airbags, and we'll analyze. The Boeing team will analyze the flight test data, see if any improvements, any changes, any things that can be improved and made, and then we'll get ready for us at the post-certification mission number 1 that we call Starliner 1. I think Dragon had a similar one. They called themselves Crew 1. Well, we're Starliner 1, and we'll be ready to fly when the spacecraft is.
Right. And so obviously there's still a lot on this road for Starliner, but when you do fly next year on Starliner 1, Mike, I know that there's a bunch of people here who are very excited for you, so much so that they created this shirt.
Oh, no.
I love it.
Mike Fink Fan Club. That's right. Oh, he's hiding, guys. He's hiding behind his computer right now.
I am deeply humbled. Thank you.
No, yes. It just goes to show that so many people are invested in Boeing and NASA and ULA working together on the Starliner program. So we celebrated together with the crewed flight test today and launch. And again, we still have so much more of the mission to go, and we can't wait for your flight for Starliner 1. All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again to everyone who submitted questions throughout the broadcast. You really helped to contribute to the broadcast. And Mike, really great to have you here marking this historic launch with us.
It's great to be on the team, and you guys are both are extreme professionals, as well as our production team and the PAO team that's right up the hill from us. Great job, everyone.
Absolutely, and today's liftoff could not have happened without the many teams across the country supporting this launch, which of course is just the first of many critical milestones for this flight test.
Yeah, that's right, Dee. So our coverage tonight, or today, won't end here. First up, we have a post-launch news conference starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time right here on NASA TV, followed by continuous coverage of Butch and Sonny's transit to the International Space Station. Starliner is on course to dock at the station in just over 25 hours from now, and then the ISS crew will welcome them on board. Again, we will take all of that live on NASA TV, NASA Plus, and our social media channels.
And their journey will provide the data needed to bring Boeing closer to having the continuous privilege of carrying astronauts to and from the space station.
Hey, and that's the perfect opportunity, right, to pull up this QR code we have ready for you. If you scan it, it'll take you to go.nasa.gov/CFT, where you will find everything you'd want to know about this crew flight test and also NASA's commercial crew program, which is why we're flying today.
Mike, it's been great to have you with us. Your insight today was important and invaluable.
Thank you very much, and the Boeing company should get a big pat on the back today for a job well done so far.
Yes, again, congratulations to all the team. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate your time here on the official launch broadcast of NASA's Boeing crew flight tests. And that's going to do it for us here on the Space Coast of Florida. For Boeing, ULA, and NASA, thank you so much for watching our official broadcast of this historic cruise. We leave you now with a replay of launch. Have a spectacular day. Here are the astronauts, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Sonny Williams, as you can see, suiting up for their mission into the history books.
This is a tradition. The whole idea here is to lose to the chief.
Out of the suit-up room, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Sonny Williams walking to an elevator at the end of the hallway. Our CFT crew taking their first steps outside, now en route to launch pad 41.
Crew transport vehicle is into the pad.
Butch and Sunny arriving on level 12.
Last look at planet Earth for a while, saying hi to us. Hi, Sunny.
Butch getting in there.
Gotten strapped into their seats here.
Hatch closure complete. Roger.
3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff of Starliner and Atlas V, carrying 2 American heroes, drawing a line to the stars for all of us.
Commander Butch, when we're there calling down to Mission Control here in Houston that the spacecraft has begun rolling into the right attitude for its ascent, and guidance, navigation, and control officer here in the room seeing good data on that.